one of the hardest truths I ever had to face, going through recovery from childhood sexual abuse, severe alcoholism, suicide, starvation, blah, blah, blah. One of the hardest truths I had to face that was that I was not strong enough. When it first came to light to me at 20 years old that all these things were true, I honestly knew that I was not courageous enough. I was not strong enough. I could not do it. I could not look at this huge challenge before me and think honestly to myself, or even delusionally to myself, I can do this. And so I had to, really sit myself down and think about what that meant. Because I've always been a high achiever. I've always been extremely competitive. I've always strove for greatness in everything that I do. It's important. Excellence is important to me because I don't see a better orientation toward life, whatever. But the point is, for the biggest challenge of my life, I had to tell myself I couldn't do it, which went against everything inside of that orientation towards greatness. And that was extremely, extremely difficult to deal with. And it took me, I don't even remember how long, but there was like a shock to that revelation that I was not going to be able to do. I was not strong enough. I didn't have the heart. I didn't have the spirit. I could not do it. And I would just tell myself that for a couple days or whatever, however long it was, like, you can't do it. Like, you can't do it. And eventually, thankfully, my practical side kicked in and thought, okay, what's the problem here? The problem is that I'm not good enough at suffering to handle this big challenge, because that is truly what the problem is that I know that I am not worthy enough or courageous enough to endure the suffering that this challenge is going to bring on. I am not going to be able to handle that. So the problem is my suffering endurance. And so I also believe that the body, the mind, and the spirit are infinitely trainable. And that if you don't have something over time with consistency through intentional reps and tracking progress, you can become almost anything. And I say almost anything because this is a quick tangent, but I say you can become almost anything except time might run out. So like, you might say you'll never be an NBA player. I'm like, well, if my theory holds true, which I think it does, if you actually put in the work, you could become an NBA player. But time would run out because you probably get to the point in the process of training something where you're either too old for it to actually work, or it took your whole life because you never actually, you had so much to train that time would run out. That's the tangent. But I believe that everything about you is infinitely trainable. So I thought, my problem is suffering endurance. How do we train that? How can I get better at that? It's the same way you do anything in the gym. You want to squat, but you can't squat yet. Okay. What can you do that is a squat? Can you do a body weight squat? No, you can't do a body weight squat. Can you get up off a chair? You can't get up off a chair. Can you sit down in a chair? Can you sit down in a chair with assistance? Whatever the smallest, most regressible thing is that you can handle, that's where you start. Doesn't matter what it is. That's where you start. If you hate yourself because of the position that you have to start in, you'll never start. So don't fuck all that. You know what I'm saying? That's your starting point. So that's what I did with suffering. I said, suffering is the same anywhere else, no matter what you do. Suffering is enduring something that you cannot bear. That's what suffering is. You're suffering. You're enduring something you can't bear. It's like a paradox almost. Like you can't bear it, but yet you still are somehow, and it's just how long can you? You know what I mean? And so I just trained that mechanism. I think I started in like a cold shower because fucking the Huberman shit was popping off, and everybody's day. My own dad was doing the fucking cold shower shit in the morning, and so I'm like, and the Wim Hof thing and all that. So I'm like, all right, that seems wildly uncomfortable, and it's exactly what I think suffering is. It's staying inside of something that's unbearable for time, essentially. So it was like, can I sit in the cold shower for 3 minutes? The answer was no. Okay. Can I sit in the cold shower for 1 minute? The answer was no. What about 30 seconds? No, I wanted to get out. Okay, let's regress it down. Can you sit in the cold water for 5 seconds? Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Okay, we'll sit in the water 5 seconds. You know what I mean? And over time, you just progress that. 5 seconds becomes 10 seconds, becomes 20, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 3 minutes. All of a sudden, you have the skill of being in cold water for 3 minutes. And it's a very small feat, but it's one that you put in your library, because that's the point, is, you want to build a library of undeniable proof at increasing scale that you can endure suffering. Because eventually you will progress that to a scale that is somewhat close to the existential challenge that you're trying to face. And you will be able to look back at the years of daily reps that are undeniable, because it's proof, because you did it, that you did this thing, you did this thing, you did this thing. And these things keep increasing in how hard they feel. And eventually, if you can act upon the last couple most courageous things that you suffered through, you can then take a shot at the next biggest one. And you might fail. Okay, keep trying. Eventually you will get it. Eventually you will get it. And so you keep relying on the past couple magnitudes of bouts of suffering that you had the courage to overcome. And that gives you to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Eventually you do things that are hard enough that it makes you look at the hard of that existential challenge and go, it's not that, but it's almost close. And the fact that I've been able to prove this pattern of relying on past magnitudes of courage to tackle or attempt the next one means that I am ready to at least take a shot at it. And you don't need, there is no illusory courage here. This is real courage that is built upon a foundation of legitimate proof. It's not, I am strong. It's not affirmations in the mirror. It's not Post-it notes on your bathroom mirror. You know what I mean? It is real life that you did, that nobody can deny that you did, because you did it, and you know you did it. And so you do that, you look at that, and that's your strength. That's where courage comes from. That's where confidence comes from. It does not come from, it's not manufactured. You cannot create it out of nothing. You can, but it's not true, and people know that it's not true. But real courage, real confidence is built on a library of proof. And so take, an exercise principle and regress the amount of proof that you need down to the smallest possible thing you can manage and build up from that. It might take you 3 years. It took me 3 years. And I was a psycho about this stuff. It was also when the Goggins thing was going crazy and everybody was like, do hard shit and blah, blah, blah. So I got this societal fuel from that. Yeah, people are doing hard stuff. What can I do that's fucking hard? You know what I mean? And if you're really efficient about it, you put that into a physical exercise realm where the things that you choose to do that are extremely difficult benefits you physically. So, as a consequence, as a side consequence of choosing to train courage in order to tackle your most existential problems, you're also becoming extremely fit, because you're choosing to do things that are extremely difficult physically, because suffering is the same, that you get better physically while you get closer to being the person that can handle your shit. And that is a fucking efficient ass way to get better. And, you might say, okay, what was the thing that you got to that was the thing that gave you the strength to take the big challenge on? Well, it was a combination of things. It was like, I ran a marathon, and, roll your eyes because the running thing is huge right now. That's fine. But I didn't run a marathon because I wanted to be a hybrid athlete, or I wanted to be a marathon runner or a runner at all. I hate running. I at the start, I love it now, but I hated running, and it was really uncomfortable for me. And I've never been a runner. I've been an athlete, but I've never been a runner. So I ran my first mile in my recovery process that I ever ran on purpose. And even in all my sports, I probably never ran a mile straight without stopping for anything. So it was like a mile was a huge challenge. How the fuck am I going to run 26.2? And, a year of training, and alongside many other things that I did that were difficult. And I got to this marathon, and, whatever. The marathon was probably the hardest thing I ever did physically. The course was challenging. The winds were challenging. I was actually trying to run as fast as I could. It was the best race I could have possibly done, like as far as how fast I ran. And it was the most physically challenging thing I've ever done. And because of that, and many other things outside of just running, it was just such a magnitude that it gave me the strength to, give myself a shot to look at the ugliest parts of me. Give myself a shot to not look at what happened to me, not look at how I felt about it, the things I missed out because of what happened to me, but look at how I respond because of what happened to me. And this is uncomfortable. I'm about to tell you something that's really uncomfortable, and it might be confusing, but this is the truth. People talk about shadow work and all that stuff, and most people get that wrong. It is not the worst things that happen to you. It's the worst things about who you are now because of that. What I mean, it's not that my shadow or the ugliest part of me is that I was sexually abused as a child. The ugliest part of me now is that there is a small part of me, or was a small part of me, that wanted to sexually abuse others in the way that I was so that somebody else would feel the amount of pain that I felt. Hurt people hurt other people. That's where it comes from. That's the shadow. What about you is so ugly you won't even say it out loud? Because you can say you can get to the point where you can say I was sexually abused as a child. It's difficult, but you can get there. It's very difficult to admit honestly to yourself and say out loud, I want to do this thing that was done to me to other people so that they can hurt the way that I hurt. That's ugly. That takes a lot of courage to open up and access and sit with and not deny and not try to justify and make any excuses for. To know that that's a truth, that there is a part of you that feels that way. That doesn't mean you're that way. Doesn't mean you're gonna do that. It just means there's a part of you that feels that way. Those are the big challenges that take an immense amount of courage to admit to yourself, and as well as the whole process. And so courage is trainable. If you regress suffering down to the smallest possible thing you can manage, and slowly, over time, build up daily reps that increase in magnitude of suffering, that prove to you that you can overcome something you didn't think you could. Courage is trainable. When you have courage, the recovery process opens up to you.